There's something really important we need to talk about when it comes to dealing with narcissists, and it's not always what people expect. We often think that narcissists are fearless, untouchable even. They walk into a room with that inflated confidence, that perfectly constructed image, that sharp ability to charm or intimidate, and they can make us feel like we're the small ones. But here's the thing no one tells you. Narcissists do have fear. They just bury it so deeply that even they don't like to admit it exists. What narcissists fear most isn't confrontation or conflict. They thrive on drama. It gives them fuel. What they fear isn't even rejection, at least not in the same way the rest of us do. The thing that makes a narcissist truly afraid, the kind of fear that lingers and shakes them to their core, is being seen. I don't mean seen in the way they want to be seen, with applause and admiration and that perfectly controlled spotlight. Really seen for who they actually are behind the mask. When someone looks at them and doesn't flinch, doesn't try to fix them, doesn't fight with them, just sees through the performance and doesn't buy in, that is terrifying to them. Let's sit with that for a second. Because most of us, especially those of us who've dealt with narcissists in relationships, families, workplaces, we've been trained to question ourselves. We've been told, sometimes subtly and sometimes loudly, that we're the problem, that we're too emotional, that we're imagining things, that our instincts are off. And it takes a huge amount of courage to pull away from that manipulation and trust what we feel, that gnawing discomfort, that tight feeling in our chest when something doesn't sit right, even if we can't explain it logically. Narcissists play in that space of doubt. They know how to create fog. They gaslight, they distort, they redirect, and they project. And they do all of this so we stop trusting ourselves and start deferring to them. It's not because they're strong, it's because they're scared. Scared that if we ever fully trusted what we knew deep down, we'd see them for what they really are. Not this larger-than-life character, but someone deeply insecure, deeply fragile, and desperately trying to avoid accountability. Here's the paradox. A narcissist builds their entire identity around appearing powerful while doing everything they can to keep people from realizing how powerless they really feel inside. That's why when you finally say something like, "I see through you, and I'm not afraid," it hits them like an earthquake. Because in that moment, you're not shouting, you're not arguing, you're not begging, you're not even trying to win. You're just standing there, grounded in truth. You're seeing them without illusion, and you're not intimidated. And for them, that's a loss of control. And loss of control for a narcissist is existential terror. They need people to stay confused. They need people to keep playing roles, the pleaser, the fixer, the one who explains themselves over and over. They survive off those roles, and when you drop the role, when you stop feeding that system, they panic, not always in ways you can see, not always outwardly. Sometimes it comes off as anger or silence or punishment. But make no mistake, underneath whatever tactic they reach for next, there's fear because you stopped playing the part they cast you in. You stepped out of the script. And here's what I want you to really hold on to. Seeing someone clearly isn't cruel. It's not vengeful. It's not dramatic. It's actually one of the most compassionate things we can do because it means we're living in reality. It means we're not buying the story someone's selling at the cost of our own peace. It means we're choosing clarity over chaos. Sometimes people think setting boundaries or confronting narcissistic behavior has to look like a big scene, but it doesn't. Sometimes it's just one quiet sentence that says, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." And that moment, that shift in energy, that calm certainty, that's what a narcissist truly can't handle. Because it's not reactive, it's not emotional warfare, it's just truth. And narcissists don't have tools for truth. They only know how to fight in the fog. So the moment you step out of the fog, you're not just protecting yourself, you're reclaiming your reality. You're saying, I get to decide what's true for me. And that is terrifying to someone who's only ever felt safe when they're dictating the narrative. If you've ever been in that dynamic, you know how hard it is to get to that place. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. This isn't about shame. This is about knowing what's possible. Knowing that you don't have to yell or prove or exhaust yourself trying to earn validation from someone who will never give it freely. You just have to see and trust what you see. That alone changes everything. Because at the end of the day, narcissists don't fear people who hate them. They don't fear people who fight them. They fear people who no longer need them, people who no longer believe them, people who've reclaimed their voice, their dignity, and their ability to walk away without looking back. They fear you when you're clear. Now, let's talk about something that sounds almost too simple to be true. The idea that one sentence can actually shift the balance of power between you and a narcissist. I know it sounds dramatic, maybe even a little naive. One sentence against someone who's been twisting your words for years. Someone who seems to always land on top, always find a way to make you the problem, always come out looking like the victim or the hero while you're left questioning your own memory. Yes. One sentence, but not just any sentence. A sentence that is backed by clarity, by truth, and most importantly, by your decision to no longer participate in their game. See, the power of that one sentence isn't in how loud it is or how cutting the words are. It's in what it represents, a shift in energy, a shift in perspective. It marks the moment you stop reacting and start responding. The moment you stop explaining yourself, trying to make them see your side, trying to justify your feelings. The moment you realize you don't owe them that anymore. And maybe you never did. That moment is where the real power begins. When we've been caught in a narcissist web, whether it's a romantic partner, a parent, a boss, a friend, we spend a lot of time doubting ourselves, not because we're weak, but because we're wired for connection, for empathy, for understanding. We want to believe the best in people. We want things to make sense. And narcissists exploit that. They thrive on confusion. They're masters at creating double binds where no matter what you do, you're wrong. You're either too emotional or too cold, too available or not available enough, too forgiving or too resentful. You're never just enough, because that's the hook. If they keep you chasing enoughness, they keep control. So imagine this. After all the circular conversations, after all the walking on eggshells, you stop. You stop trying to win the conversation. You stop trying to defend yourself. And instead, you say one sentence, not to hurt them, but to free yourself. A sentence like, I see through you and I'm not afraid. And that's not a threat. That's not aggression. That's clarity. And it's the one thing they can't fight. Because here's what you need to know. Narcissists don't operate well in clarity. They rely on ambiguity, on your uncertainty. When you say something clear, something that's rooted in your grounded knowing, it disrupts the system they've spent so long building. It's like pulling the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz. The illusion is shattered and suddenly they're no longer the one holding the power. You are. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you stood in truth. And let's be honest, getting to that one sentence isn't easy. It's not a moment that comes after a good night's sleep and a cup of coffee. It's a moment that usually comes after a lot of pain, after the late night questioning, after the tears in the car, after the feeling of, am I the crazy one? It comes after the realization that no amount of compassion or effort or bending yourself into shapes will ever be enough for someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. And when that realization lands, it's heavy, but it's also freeing because it means you don't have to play anymore. You don't have to explain your worth to someone who doesn't want to see it. You don't have to argue with someone who never had the intention of hearing you. You don't have to keep revisiting wounds with someone who keeps handing you the same knife. You get to say one sentence, not to convince them, but to remind yourself who you are. That's what makes it powerful, not the words themselves, but what they represent. They represent the end of the performance, the end of the emotional labor, the end of trying to get water from a stone. That sentence says, I'm no longer available for manipulation. It says, I know what you're doing and I'm not dancing with it anymore. And when that energy shifts, it shakes something in them. because they're used to you responding with emotion. They're used to the tears, the anger, the pleading, and suddenly you're not giving them any of it. You're just done. I want to be really clear here. This sentence isn't magic. It won't make the narcissist apologize or become self-aware. That's not the goal. The goal is not to fix them. The goal is to reclaim your space, your clarity, your peace. And that starts by using your voice not as a weapon, but as a boundary. A simple, direct, grounded statement that says, I see you, I see what you're doing, and I'm not playing this game anymore. You don't even need them to hear it. You don't need a dramatic confrontation or a scene. Sometimes you say that sentence quietly in your own head as you walk away. Sometimes you say it with your actions, not your words, by not returning the text, by not engaging in the bait, by not explaining yourself for the 100th time. Sometimes that one sentence is a decision, not a declaration. And let me tell you, the moment you choose that, everything starts to shift. Maybe not externally right away, but internally, you'll feel it. That weight starts to lift. That inner voice you've been second guessing gets louder. And you realize you were never crazy. You were just conditioned to doubt your reality. That one sentence is a reclamation. It's not about scaring them, although yes, narcissists do fear people who see through them. But it's not about revenge. It's not about making them pay. It's about breaking the cycle. It's about ending the emotional contract you never signed but somehow ended up bound to. You get to walk away not with bitterness but with clarity, not with anger but with peace, not with in peace. That deep, settled, unshakable peace is the one thing a narcissist can never give you, but you can give it to yourself. One sentence, one shift, one decision to stop shrinking. That's where it starts. And so here we are. The sentence, the one sentence that when spoken from a grounded place inside of you becomes more than just words. It becomes a mirror, a crack in the facade, a line drawn so clearly that it tells a narcissist everything they never wanted to hear without you having to raise your voice or explain a thing. And it goes like this. I see through you, and I'm not afraid. It's simple, almost too simple, right? But don't let that fool you. That sentence is powerful precisely because of what it doesn't do. It doesn't beg, it doesn't accuse, it doesn't blame, it doesn't spiral into a list of examples and evidence and emotional breakdowns. It doesn't fall into the trap of trying to convince the narcissist of anything. That sentence is calm, it's quiet, and it carries more weight than 100 arguments ever could. Let's break it down. I see through you. That first part is where everything begins to unravel for them. Narcissists rely on the image they've built, the charm, the deflection, the performance. And up until this point, that image has probably worked. It's pulled people in. It's protected them from accountability. But when you say, I see through you, you're saying, I know what this is. I've connected the dots. I'm no longer hypnotized by the act. You're saying I've woken up. And let me tell you, that is devastating to a narcissist because they thrive on illusion. They invest so much energy into controlling perception, yours, theirs, everyone else's. So to be seen without the mask, to have someone look them straight in the eyes and recognize the patterns, the manipulation, the fear behind the aggression, that terrifies them, not because they're suddenly going to change, but because their power lies in making you question reality, not sit firmly inside of it. That moment when you say, I see through you, is like taking the mask off at the end of a play. The lights go up, the costume doesn't fit anymore, there's no applause, just reality. And it's not glamorous, it's not flattering, it's not designed to protect their fragile ego. It just is. And there's nothing more threatening to a narcissist than someone who sees them for who they are and doesn't flinch. But then you take it a step further, and I'm not afraid. That part, that's the knockout, because it's one thing to be seen. It's another to know you've lost control over someone who no longer fears your opinion, your disapproval, your silence, or your anger. Narcissists weaponize fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen as the bad one. They manipulate through silence, through guilt, through criticism and unpredictability, all designed to keep you just scared enough that you won't walk away. So when you say, and I'm not afraid, what you're really saying is, you don't get to control how I see myself anymore. You're saying your chaos doesn't live in me now. You're saying, I don't need you to like me, love me, validate me, or even agree with me. I'm not staying small so you can feel big. That's why it works. That's why it lands so hard, not because it hurts them, but because it frees you. And nothing threatens a narcissist more than someone who is emotionally free from their grasp. And now let's be honest, you don't just get to this sentence overnight. It comes after a long, hard journey. It comes after you've been talked in circles, gaslit, blamed, dismissed, and devalued. It comes after you've doubted your own instincts so many times that you barely recognize your own voice anymore. And then slowly you start putting the pieces back together. You start remembering, you start noticing the patterns. You stop making excuses, you stop believing the lies, and you start seeing clearly. And when you do, when you finally see it for what it is, that's when the fear starts to fade. Not because they've changed, but because you have. You're not seeking permission to leave. You're not trying to win them over. You're not giving them the power to define your worth anymore. You're reclaiming it, one sentence at a time. I want you to know something, and I want you to hold it tight. You don't need anyone else to validate what you see. You don't need a courtroom or a therapist or a group of friends to all say, yes, that was narcissistic abuse. If you've lived it, you know what it feels like to walk on eggshells, to be told your feelings are too much, to be pulled in with praise and pushed out with cruelty. You know what it feels like to be blamed for the very things that hurt you. You don't have to justify your clarity. You just have to trust it. And trusting it means stepping into your voice, not the loud performative voice, the still grounded one, the one that says, I see through you, the one that says, I'm not afraid, the one that doesn't need to raise its volume to make an impact, the one that doesn't need to win an argument to stand in truth. Because here's what they won't tell you. Narcissists aren't afraid of your anger. They're afraid of your indifference. They're not afraid of confrontation. They're afraid of your clarity. They're not afraid of you yelling. They're afraid of you walking away with peace in your eyes. Because when you're calm, when you're rooted, when you see them without fear, that's when they lose all control. And no matter how they respond, whether they rage, retreat, manipulate, or try to win you back, it doesn't matter, because that sentence isn't about them. It's about you. It's about finally breaking the pattern. It's about knowing who you are, what you deserve, and what you will never tolerate again. You don't need to shout it. You don't need to post it. You don't even need to say it to their face. Sometimes you just need to say it to yourself in the mirror, in your journal, in the quiet of your own heart. I see through you and I'm not afraid. Because that sentence is not a threat. It's a homecoming, a return to yourself, a moment of sacred truth that no one can take from you again. That's why they fear it. It's easy to look at a narcissist bravado and think they're immune to anything. They walk around like they own the world, always in control, always a step ahead. They know how to manipulate a room, how to shift the focus onto themselves, how to make you question your reality. They're experts at turning the tables, making everything seem like it's your fault, your weakness, your emotional instability. They feed off that chaos. But here's the thing that they never tell you. They're terrified of something that you might not even realize you have, and that thing is certainty. Because here's what they fear most: clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you stop questioning yourself, stop second guessing your instincts, and stop trying to explain things away. The clarity that emerges when you can look at their behavior and not flinch, when you can see through the mask and not feel intimidated. It's not the drama they're afraid of. It's not the shouting or the conflict. No, what makes a narcissist panic is when someone sees them for who they truly are and doesn't play along with their games. You see, narcissists rely on your confusion. They thrive on the gray area, the space where you're not sure if you're being overly sensitive, if you're misinterpreting their actions, or if maybe, just maybe, you're the one in the wrong. It's in this space of uncertainty where they get their power. Because as long as you're unsure, they can keep you off balance. They can keep shifting the narrative to fit their needs. They can keep pulling you back into the emotional whirlpool, spinning you around until you're gasping for air, always questioning your own version of reality. But when you stop doubting yourself, when you finally see what's been going on and you stop giving it the energy of uncertainty, that's when everything changes. Narcissists thrive in that fog of emotional confusion. They need that lack of clarity to operate, to maintain control, because when you're uncertain, you're easy to manipulate. But when you're certain, when you stand firm in the truth of what you've experienced, they lose their power. They can't manipulate you when you no longer fall for their tricks. They can't control you when you stop giving them the emotional ammunition they need to keep you on the defensive. And that's why this sentence, "I see through you and I'm not afraid," is so powerful. It cuts through that fog. It's a declaration of truth. It says, I know exactly what you're doing and I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't require them to change. It doesn't need them to apologize or even acknowledge their behavior. It just requires you to stop playing by their rules. And that's the moment when their entire house of cards begins to crumble. Now, let's be clear about something important. Certainty doesn't mean that you have all the answers or that you're in complete control of the situation. What it means is that you're no longer relying on someone else's version of the truth. You're trusting yourself. You're trusting your gut, your instincts, your ability to see things for what they are. You're recognizing that you don't need them to explain their behavior or make sense of their contradictions. You can see the manipulation, you can feel the gaslighting, and you don't need to search for validation anymore. You don't need to apologize for your emotions. You don't need to explain why you're hurt, why you're frustrated, or why you're finally drawing a line in the sand. The narcissist is terrified of that, because the moment you're certain about what's happening, they can no longer use their usual tactics to disarm you. They can no longer make you feel small or crazy or like you're the one who's overreacting. They can no longer flip the script and make you doubt yourself. They lose their grip on you, and that's when they panic. That's when they try to double down on their tactics or they withdraw completely. But none of it works when you stand in your truth. And there's a sense of power that comes from owning your clarity, from sitting comfortably with the truth of a situation without needing to explain, justify, or negotiate. It's like standing in front of a narcissist and saying, I see exactly who you are, and I'm no longer afraid of how you try to make me feel. You don't have to shout it. You don't have to escalate things. You don't need to make it a big scene. The power of this truth is in its simplicity. The moment you stop engaging with their tactics, when you no longer play their game, their ability to control the situation dissipates. This clarity is what allows you to set boundaries that stick. Boundaries aren't just about saying no or walking away. Boundaries are about recognizing that you have a right to decide what behavior you will tolerate and what you won't. They are about acknowledging that you don't need to be manipulated into silence, into submission, or into confusion. And when you stand firm in that truth, when you don't waver in your certainty, the narcissist can't penetrate that boundary. They can't use their usual tactics to wear you down, to confuse you, or to make you second guess yourself. And here's what makes this so revolutionary. You don't need them to acknowledge your boundaries for them to work. Narcissists are not known for respecting boundaries. They don't care about your needs or your feelings unless it serves them. But the moment you make it clear that you're not engaging with their manipulation, you're already taking back your power. You're no longer waiting for their permission. You're no longer waiting for them to validate your reality. You're choosing your peace, your boundaries, your clarity, and you're doing it without any emotional bargaining or trying to get them to see the light. You don't need them to change. You just need to be clear. And make no mistake, the narcissist will notice that clarity. They might try to challenge it, they might throw tantrums, or they might go quiet, or they might resort to their usual games. But you'll notice something different when you're clear. They start to hesitate. They start to lose their edge because they don't know what to do with someone who no longer plays their game. And they don't know how to navigate someone who isn't emotionally reactive, someone who isn't constantly questioning their own reality, someone who's firmly grounded in the truth. In the end, clarity is the most powerful weapon you have, not because it's aggressive, but because it's unwavering. And when you say, I see through you and I'm not afraid, you are making the ultimate statement of self-preservation. You're not trying to fix them. You're not trying to prove anything to them. You're simply standing in your truth. And that, my friend, is what makes them fear you. By now, we've talked a lot about power, the power of clarity, the power of seeing through the narcissist's facade, and the power of speaking a single sentence that shifts everything. But now let's talk about something even deeper than that. What happens when you truly let go? Not just in your words, but in your actions, in your mindset, and in the way you live your life going forward. Because that's where the real freedom is. And let me tell you, once you release your emotional grip on the narcissist's games, once you stop trying to control the narrative and simply let go, the impact is more profound than any sentence could ever be. It's one thing to declare your clarity, to stand firm in your truth, and to state with confidence, I see through you and I'm not afraid. That's a beautiful, powerful thing. But there's another level to this, and it's the quiet, powerful release that follows. And this release isn't just about stepping away from someone who has hurt you. It's about reclaiming your emotional energy in a way that no longer gives them a single ounce of control over your inner world. This is where the real shift happens. Here's what I want you to understand. Narcissists thrive on one thing, your emotional investment. They are masters at pulling you into their dramas, their chaos, their highs and lows. They need you to care. They need you to be hooked into their game. They need to keep you emotionally entangled, so you're constantly responding to their demands, their crises, their needs. The moment you stop giving them that emotional currency, when you stop investing in their narrative, it's like taking away the oxygen from a fire. It fizzles out. It can't survive without your energy. But it's not just about stopping the emotional investment in the obvious dramatic ways. It's about the subtle shifts, the moments where you realize you're not checking your phone every few minutes to see if they've texted. You're not replaying conversations in your head wondering what went wrong or what you could have done differently. You stop looking for signs of their approval or validation. You stop questioning if they're angry or happy or if you've done something to upset them. When you truly release them from your emotional space, you stop reacting. You stop caring in the way that keeps you tied to them. And that's the key. You might think that to release someone, you need them to apologize. You need them to admit they've hurt you. But here's the truth. You don't need them to change or acknowledge anything for your release to be real. Your release comes from inside of you. It comes from recognizing that no matter what they do or don't do, they no longer get to take up space in your mind. They no longer get to dictate your emotions. You stop waiting for them to give you the closure they owe you. You give it to yourself instead. It's like a weight lifting off your shoulders when you realize that you don't need to keep holding on to their actions, their words, or their behavior. The more you release them from your mental and emotional grip, the more peace you start to feel. And that peace, It's theirs to fear. It's theirs to panic about, because nothing triggers a narcissist more than your emotional detachment. When they can no longer provoke you, when they can no longer pull you into their storm, they lose control. They lose their ability to get a reaction from you, and that is the ultimate weapon. This is where the power truly lies. You see, when you stop reacting to their manipulation, when you stop feeding their need for validation, when you stop caring whether they're happy or angry or how they perceive you, you finally take your power back. And when you do this, you no longer need to say the words or do anything dramatic. You simply stop participating in their game. And when you stop participating, you take away everything that gives them power over you. Letting go means you no longer feel the need to be in constant emotional turmoil. You stop letting their actions dictate your mood. You stop looking for answers where there are none. You stop giving them the power to keep you on edge, to keep you wondering what's going to happen next. You stop giving them the emotional satisfaction of watching you suffer, of watching you bend, of watching you contort yourself to make them feel better, to make them see you the way you want to be seen. And in this space of release, you finally understand that your value is not tied to how they perceive you. Your worth doesn't come from their approval or disapproval. It doesn't come from how they manipulate you or what they demand of you. Your worth is yours. It's always been yours. And when you truly let go, you stop searching for confirmation of your worth from someone who will never truly value you the way you deserve. You stop giving them the emotional space to make you feel small, unheard, or unimportant. You let go of the need to fix them, to change them, to make them see the error of their ways. Here's the part that might surprise you, though. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're giving up on yourself or anyone else. It doesn't mean you're resigning to suffering or injustice. It means you finally realize that you cannot change them. And more importantly, you've stopped trying. And that, my friend, is a gift. A gift to yourself. You've released yourself from the emotional prison they built for you. And that release is everything. Letting go also doesn't mean you're weak. It's not about being passive or giving in. It's about being strong enough to walk away from what no longer serves you. It's about being brave enough to stand in your truth without needing them to see it or accept it. And it's about realizing that your peace is worth more than their chaos, their drama, their manipulation, or their need for control. And once you let go, you'll notice something incredible happening. The emotional weight you've been carrying for so long starts to lift. The constant tension, the questioning, the uncertainty, it all begins to dissolve. And while it may not happen overnight, each day you continue to let go, you'll feel the relief. You'll feel the freedom. You'll feel the space opening up for you to breathe again, to live again, to step into a version of yourself that isn't defined by their actions or their opinions. You will find a deeper sense of peace that isn't contingent on anyone else's approval or behavior. A narcissist will try everything they can to re-enter your emotional space. They'll try to trigger you, to make you doubt your decision, to pull you back into their cycle of manipulation. But the moment you truly release them, their hold on you weakens. And that, my friend, is where you find your power, because they can't take your peace from you. They can't take your clarity from you. They can't take your emotional freedom from you unless you let them. And you're done with letting them. You're done with being their emotional puppet. You're done with being caught in their storm. And when you finally release them, you'll see them for what they truly are: small, scared, and incapable of doing anything that could actually bring them peace. But that's not your problem anymore. That's not your responsibility anymore. You've let go. And in doing so, you've given yourself the greatest gift of all: your own peace, your own freedom. And that, my friend, is where your power lies.